Welcome into the Odds and Audibles podcast. Matt Prehm, Erik Skopil, Jared Mack, from maybe the most creative post-game podcast we have
ever done.
We have commandeered a table that's made for a 5-year-old.
The table goes up to my knees.
And we're on the 6th floor of Folsom Stadium after Oregon wins 49-10 against Colorado. Ultimate butt kicking by the Ducks. Offensively, a game that I think a lot of fans are going to love. A lot of fans are going to talk about, the trick plays, the creative plays, which we should say trick plays because they execute them and they run them in practice quite often.
That's what Dan said.
According to Dan Lanning.
Not trick plays.
But we saw Bo Nix throw for 2 touchdown passes, rush for 2 touchdown passes. He caught a touchdown pass. Bucky Irving threw that one. We saw an offensive tackle catch a touchdown pass in this game. We saw Christian Gonzalez have 2 interceptions.
Noah Sewell had a touchdown.
Yep, Noah Sewell had a touchdown
on
offense as well. Overall, I think this is a game that Oregon comes away saying, hey, we were supposed to dominate. We dominated. Certainly there's things to work on, but you did what you were supposed to do with this outcome.
And this was how I said I think we all agreed, how you'd measure this outcome on Friday.
Yeah.
Our prediction show was what does Dan say in the post game? And I thought Dan basically came out and said, played pretty close to a complete game, which is something he hasn't said many times so far this season. And I would agree. I think there were certainly some defensive moments you really don't love. The long touchdown, that was a miscommunication. Christian Gonzalez said, I think it was he and Steve Stephens on that side of the field. Just somebody didn't cover one part of the field. And
81-yard touchdown.
Jordan Tyson
really helped
a long way. And then offensively, I don't have a whole lot of gripes. There were a couple sequences that didn't go fantastic, but they're playing in, by the way, the craziest wind I've ever seen. Dan said it was the windiest game he's ever played or coached in. Bo basically said the same, and yet
40 miles per hour winds.
And at times you could legitimately. I saw a paper plate flow up past the press box at one point, and that indicates that
it was pretty impressive.
Some very funny moments of Dan Lanning's walking around the field, and the kicking net falls down in front of him. No one touches it just because of the wind. The pom poms and the cheerleaders flew out of the field.
Multiple times.
Had to stop play for that. I mean, fans watching probably saw some of it. There were just all sorts of weird stuff with the wind, and yet 20 of 24 passing for Bo. He was excellent. I think I don't know where the reality of the Heisman thing is, but he's putting up performances that you can at least say are worthy of being in the discussion. And I know it sounds like Rod Gilmore brought that up quite a bit on the telecast. I still think it's a long shot. We're a very long shot. He wins. I still think he has a chance maybe on the outside, maybe better than an outside chance to get invited to New York. But performances like this now, 8 straight weeks of this with really only one, I think, subpar-ish game passing against Stanford. Every other game, I think, over 70% passing. It's been fantastic.
And then again in that Stanford game, he had an 80-yard touchdown.
Right.
So even those subpar games, they have some good games to it. I don't really have a lot more to add. I mean, this was exactly what we anticipated Oregon to doing. I think we were all in the 56 to 20 range in terms of game scores. 12.9 yards per completion, over 10.5 yards per attempt. So they were moving the ball down the field. They didn't take as many deep shots as they normally did. But again, they still had longs of over 40 yards through the air, which is a lot of yards after the catch. Penalties, I guess, was still an issue. A couple pre-snap false start penalties.
It's not an Oregon football game without a false start.
No, it sure isn't. Not an Oregon football game without a
targeting ejection
in the second half and bad punts. So again, punting is still completely an issue with Bales as the punter.
Dan asked for your critique of the punting, and that's what he based off his offer.
I was appreciated that Dan asked me what I thought of the punt. I said I think it was great, teams. And Dan was like, "I agree." So Dan and I on the same page with the punting.
Same play, yeah.
This is, by the way, the punting thing. This is 4 guys who come out and punted in games.
They've all stunk.
And I don't know if they all stunk, but none of them have been very good. And Bale's first punt went 22 yards. There's a lot of wind. You come with excuses.
That wasn't an excuse.
I think it went right off his foot. The second one was better, 43 yards, but it's a work in progress. And if again, we're looking at critiques when they won 49-10. Let's be real. Oregon went out and did basically exactly what you wanted. The defense has some things you can critique, obviously the punting thing, but I think we're picking hits here, and I think this is pretty much what you expected, what you wanted, and we haven't really gotten into too much detail, kind of just the creativity of an offense that opens the game the way it did. I thought that was added, I will say, a very entertaining and kind of fun wrinkle to a game that overall wasn't all that competitive or really that fun for most of it.
This was definitely one of those, let's get everyone their special plays in game, because I'm really perplexed by this whole Sewell thing. Newellsville never asked for it. They never practiced it, and yet they felt
But they said they
comfortable.
practiced it this week.
Okay.
He said one this week. They put it in. But still.
But they still felt comfortable like putting them just randomly in there. Very, very coordinated, in my opinion. Josh Carley scores a touchdown on his birthday. Very unique opportunity
That was
there.
cool.
But you're right. Like the play call creativity. And there was a reporter that asked why do it against a team like Colorado. She was very just didn't care about Colorado's feelings, but she asked, why do it against Colorado and not save it for a Washington or a Utah? And Dan didn't say this, but I think he really wanted to use, well, this is the game you do it, because now Colorado, or they did it against Colorado, they had success. Now Utah, now Washington, now Oregon State, they all have to worry about that. They all have to spend some time game planning for that. And Oregon may never do it ever again.
But they showed it.
And Bo said exactly what you said about the offensive tackle thing, which, by the way, he checked into. Like, that was not the call. They got up there. They saw what the linebacker was doing. He said he read him, and he threw a ball at the Connolly for the touchdown. But he said now a defense, when we're in that 14J, they prepare for it. And how many different threats do they have in the field? Everyone there scored a touchdown, basically, besides the fullback. And
that's what's left.
That's it.
And they've already thrown it to him for a 20-yard, 15-yard game a couple weeks ago. I think that was against UCLA to Patrick Herbert. They haven't handed it to a fullback yet, but they've done all sorts of weird stuff out there. And as you said,
they handed it to a fullback today.
Well, in Sewell. You're right. So
It's
I
in
guess, but like there's so much complexity from what again is such a simple formation. And you think about, I think the thing that's really kind of interesting about that formation is it feels very old school football, and yet some of the most fun things this offense does comes from a formation that really. It's originated 30, 40 years ago, and yet they're finding all these fun things to do out of it. And as James Krepke kind of asked in the question at the end, of like, it seems like everything basically works. Like they very rarely don't succeed coming from that formation, whether it be throwing to an offensive tackle or a tight end, or handing it to a tight end on an end around, or just running it, or quarterback sneaking. Like all these different iterations seem to work. So I mean, it works. It's something that you keep going to put that way. I think you don't stop using that.
No, I don't think you stop using that either. A lot of fun things from the offense today. I'm surprised by how much they threw the ball. I really thought the winds would be an impact, but they were so unpredictable. At one point, you'd be going into the wind, and then a minute later, you'd be with the wind. And they didn't take a lot of shots downfield, like I mentioned, but they still moved the ball through the air. Colorado was just a step slow. I think Oregon, if they wanted to, could have just ran the ball as much as they possibly could and came away with the same score. But Nix was great from the very beginning, so they just stuck with him. Bucky had a 65-yard run, which was really nice.
Got him over 100 yards.
Every time I don't predict 100 yards.
Second straight week.
Yeah. No, 2 out of 3.
2 out of 3.
But second, Berkeley didn't get it. I apologize if there's quite a bit of commotion going on around us. So I apologize if the audio quality is not ideal.
Probably isn't.
Yeah. We should mention some injury stuff to kind of talk about. Several guys didn't make the trip. We saw Chase Cody here. We didn't ID him before the game, but he was here.
He was hiding in a jumpsuit type thing.
Jumpsuit?
It was like a big jacket. A big jacket.
He was here. Taki was here. Steven Jones was here. None of them
DJ Johnson
played.
was not
DJ
here.
Johnson might have been here, but we didn't see him. If he was here,
he wasn't suited up.
If he was, he certainly wasn't available today. So those 4, and then I thought kind of interesting. Like, I want to have to go back and see exactly what Dan said about Forsyth. To your question,
He just said that there are plenty of guys behind him that deserve an opportunity to play.
Yeah, but what does that mean for Alex?
I have no idea. There's no actual answer. Yeah, because what we're talking about, Alex Forsyth left the game.
Second half.
The whole second half, and Ryan Watt or Jackson Powers Johnson played center.
He never had his helmet either. So it wasn't never like hey, we're not going to play the second half to preserve your health, but keep your helmet if need be and be ready. That never happened. And so you don't want to speculate too much about it.
Yeah.
He did have, I will say, like a massive ice bag over his shoulder after the Cal game. And I wonder
Is that back again?
I just really wonder, like, hey, this game is over. You're fine, but we don't want to put you out there where maybe you re-aggravate that injury again.
Yeah.
And let's just take your helmet and remove you entirely.
That's a guy who wants to play against Washington more than.
Yes.
But here's my question:
Anybody.
if they didn't want to have him play, why would they have him play in this game at all?
Maybe he re-aggravated it
they-
in the first half,
Right.
and they're like, "Hey, Pico." I don't know. I mean, we're just speculating here. We don't know. This is the kind of thing you're talking about after a win like this, where it's so lopsided. Oregon is now dealing with some.
Well, it's a big deal if
injury
he can't
stuff.
play against you.
It is. It's huge. And we should know the offense. I thought was fine in the second half. Like, we didn't take a huge step back.
It's also Colorado.
It is. In the first play, we should note after that was like a run up the middle where Bucky ran for 65 yards. So I mean, I'm not minimizing Alex. I think Alex is one of the best offensive linemen in the conference, but
Dan is right. They do have a lot of guys.
they do have a lot of guys,
who can play there.
but it's going to be one we're monitoring this week. We're going to be monitoring the 4 guys we talked about who didn't play today. Dorlis went down early, came back. He seems to be fine. He played basically the rest of the
Thornton
game.
got hurt in the third quarter, last play of the third quarter, but then came back.
I think he's
I think that's
fine.
fine.
And then the targeting,
And Jamal Hill.
here we are again. Jamal Hill not available for the first half against Washington, and I think that's kind of a big deal. This is one of your best defensive backs, and Washington has the top offense from a pass perspective in the conference statistically, right? They throw the ball more than anybody. Penix is the most prolific passer in the conference. They've got some guys, so that's going to be a thing to monitor this week. I'm sure they'll appeal, but they're currently 0 for 2 on appeal.
I feel like this one
feels.
I feel like this
yeah.
among the 3. I feel like this is the one that maybe has the best chance. Now, does that mean I think it's going to happen? I don't know because, like you said, Jared, they've been 0 for 2.
I think that was just a common courtesy. Like, yeah, you can submit it.
Well,
it's not going to work.
I don't know if any appeal has been granted.
Because there's some way, somehow you can look at a targeting call and be like, oh, there's the targeting.
And I just think you end up undermining your officials if you reverse these. So it does feel like it's more like almost like a diplomatic move of being like, yeah, you guys can, if you don't think it's good, let us know and we'll look at it. And then they just throw it.
They just
always
throw it right in the junk mail.
Yeah, it's like some politician getting a mail from some kid being like, hey, you're doing a terrible job, and then he just tosses it up.
Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wrap up the podcast here on the Austin Levels post-game edition. All right, welcome back to post-game recap. Oregon wins again 49-10. A game in which Oregon got their full basically roster that they brought onto the field. Anthony Jones played in this game at the very end of the game.
His first action as a Duck.
First action as a Duck.
We recorded a tackle?
Yeah, I think so. I saw Nate Kruger, the Oregon's SID, mention him as we were getting ready to leave the press box as a tackle. So maybe he did, maybe he didn't.
He did. He got a tackle.
That was good to see. We saw Ben Roberts
had a nice quarterback
hurry in that game. And this is like, I kind of no offense to Colorado, but this is like maybe the biggest takeaway for me is this is what's supposed to happen in these types of games that we previously hadn't seen. And I don't know if it says preventing or maybe just slows the development of some of these younger guys, 2 of which we just mentioned that haven't played a lot of football but have gotten on the field now and have made something productive happen. They boost their confidence for the final push of the season. There's a little bit for them to film, to break down and get better at as the year progresses. And this is how you develop your team, by getting these younger players. And this is why having the start that they did, scoring 28 points in the first half, winning 28-7, and then going up 42 to I think 10 early in the third, midway through the third quarter. That's why it's so important to have those types of games and not have what happened against Cal last week.
Yeah,
because you get these opportunities.
And notable that how many times this season has Oregon given up a garbage touchdown?
Didn't happen today.
I thought that was sort of a minor storyline.
They had a turnover. The defense had a turnover.
Defense forced a turnover. How many true freshmen played?
What is this? 6.
I felt like 6 or 7.
Iuli Roberts, Tony Jones, Kyler Casper, Kamar Terrell, and Julio Flores.
Yeah, and I think it's notable that Jordan James didn't play in this game.
Yeah,
that's a guy. He got hit pretty hard on the run against Cal last week. They got stopped on 4th. It's a guy that
he traveled.
He did travel. He was here. So that's a notable one that didn't play. But yeah, they played quite a few of the freshmen. I think that might be a season high. If not, it would be.
I was surprised Winston or the two inside linebackers were not here. Devin
Yeah.
Jackson.
Well, Devin and Harris
And
haven't
Tiger.
traveled forever, but Winston has been. I hope this audio's okay because it's probably terrible. There's a lot of
That if you can hear it, it's the wind moving the empty beer cans down below.
that's
So
literally what it is.
That's how impactful this wind has been.
So Ty Thompson got a couple drives. Still hasn't
Got 2 drives.
Hasn't put one in the end zone.
1 for 2 for negative
For-
8 yards.
Which
Yeah.
is really hard to do.
Hasn't put one in the end zone in a FBS game this year. I don't know if he's done it in his career yet. Can't really.
He
I
did
don't
it
want
against
to.
Arizona, I'm pretty sure.
Did he last year?
To Dante Thornton, right?
Okay.
No,
Matt Prehm.
long.
Regardless, not building too much of it.
Yeah.
These are just more opportunities. You'd like to see some success
It
there.
happened, yeah.
His first play here was a deflected screen pass that Thornton caught, which I bet if you were in film study,
Drop it.
they'll say just knock it down. It's way behind the line of scrimmage. Thornton made a valiant effort to make something out of it. Didn't happen.
Did not happen.
I don't know if there's much else from a young guy perspective that pops. I think we kind of touched on the guys that stood out.
I have just a general assumption of this game. Very surprised at the large number of Duck fans that were here.
And Colorado fans. This game was well attended.
Yes.
42,098 the total attendance.
I think if you're on the fence as a Duck fan of going to a Colorado game, I would go. This place is awesome. As Jared just mentioned, a huge crowd with Colorado fans showing up. They were
and staying for
and
most
staying
of the game.
for most of the game. The pregame environment, while we didn't take part in any like festivities, but we saw lots of tailgates. We saw like a big on-field group of people.
They have whatever we're on top of. This field house of just beer and food and all these places. It's kind of similar to what Oregon does at
the Mo.
At the Mo.
So
it's another highlight.
And you get to watch Buffalo run around with a field place.
This Ralphie is as good as advertised.
Good marching band.
Good marching band. Erik over here is very critical of his marching bands.
I thought this was one of the best marching bands I've seen.
And then the overall backdrop of just the mountains in the area. I was pleasantly surprised. None of us have been here before.
Yeah.
I was expecting a boring blowout game, and I think the overall experience was a lot better than what I anticipated. So I would say, like, if you're a Duck fan and you're on the fence and coming to this place, I would make it. It's not something maybe you do every single time, but I think it's something you have to knock off your bucket list.
And it was impressive. We have to note just how many fans you mentioned earlier.
There
How
were
many
a
fans
lot.
there were a couple thousand maybe on the section right below the press box looking down, like
100%.
Right by the Duck bench.
full of Oregon fans
The
and
entire length of the field, the length of the field.
Yeah, it was. Maybe more. I don't know, 3,000-4,000 fans here, something like that. Maybe I don't know. I can't.
There's a lot of folks.
Well represented. And there were times on like the targeting call and the PI call where it almost felt like a home environment because the crowd was not happy.
I think that's gonna do it for us. There's not much more to discuss. It's Washington week. We do know Dan Lanning acknowledges that there is a rivalry.
Yeah,
Rivalries are real.
Maybe we mentioned that. Like Dan was like very much. This is a big rivalry game. He understands it. He can't ignore it. And we head into Washington week with, I think, what will be potentially a really exciting football game. 2-loss team. They just beat Oregon State last night.
Yep.
They'll be ranked, I'd imagine, in the cultural playoff after beating Oregon State. Only have 2 losses. That's going to be a fun weekend.
Yeah, should be a good week. We're getting some stared eyes from
Yeah,
people
we're
trying to
getting
clean
some people
rooms.
passing by. I think we should.
So we're gonna
maybe cut it short.
Yeah, we're gonna wrap this podcast up. Erik, why don't you push the end podcast button? You've been listening to the Odds Not Always podcast.
Talk to you later, folks.
Peace.